Baruch Hashem, we're learning the Holy Likutei Moharan in Shir David, Unity Flow podcast, and a little bit of an aside just before we start, because I'm in the middle of discussing, I don't know if you heard about it, I mentioned it before, this new Haredi party. It's called Haredi Asibor, Siba Haredi, and they're trying to, grow their support and grow their. So they asked me to help them make an event, and I created a whole proposal today. It didn't take me too long, Baruch Hashem, because I've had experience and a bit of help from online, and I was able to, real big event in Binyan Omar, like as an example. There's a few venues, but like thousands of people, big budget, the whole everything, all the concepts, different artists, speakers, everything. And then they get back to me and said they want me to do do social media first for a few weeks, and then they'll get to that. I'm like, I don't know, have you ever made an event just even make a bar mitzvah? You made a bar mitzvah? How much time do you need to prepare just for a bar mitzvah?
Oh.
About a month at least? Yeah, at least. They want to prepare. No, they want to prepare an event for 5,000 plus people, plus global streaming, plus it's going to be public all over Israeli media. Then we're going to waste 2 more weeks from now just fiddling around doing, some posting and connecting and then I'd only have about less than a month to do a whole mass event during Tishrei. It's impossible. It would be like a complete nace if I would pull it off. Even now, forget about, usually it should be a few months in advance. So it's basically they're saying they're not doing the event. It's like if they're sending me to do something else. Maybe I'll do it, we'll see, whatever Shem wants, but it's in the sun, right in the middle. I'm just like, wow, I'm about to learn Rabbi Nachman, and it's all about being emes and Eretz Yisrael and Tefilin and all these holy things. And then when it comes to the world of politics, and I just feel like I want to communicate, I want to speak truth, but if you're not hearing, my legacy is my family did the biggest events in history. I don't know if you've heard about this. Have I ever talked to you about it?
Oh, well.
They did Live 8, they did Live Earth, Live 8, like the biggest in history, billions streamed through satellite, biggest event, fundraising, millions. My uncle was given a knighthood, or a version of it, like CB, and then my father, also a bunch of awards. He also did the biggest events in history in terms of merchandise. It's more my father's business, but he also did it for the sports and for the charities and the biggest stuff. And
they had the Jews who did the big stuff. Yeah,
and they did pull off events in miracle time, they did manage. But we're from Yidden, we have to do it with a bit more seichel yeshivadas. They didn't have the Shabbos and the Yom Tov and the whole family, the large mishpacha. If for us to do something, it has to be with a little bit more zman and gavur. And he pulled it off. And as I put in my proposal, I said he knew how to leverage the event to almost pay nothing towards the artists and everything else, to get tremendous tzedakah done, charity. It showed you power of music and charity and unity. So that's something I'm trying to, in a Jewish way, trying to do, and it's really hard, to try and make achdus and unity in the Jewish world through these avenues, because it's a difficult nakuda. So with Hashem's help and the schus of the learning, I will have in mind to dedicate the learning, not just for this, but also for all the soldiers. My son Baruch Hashem's in training. We have to remind ourselves again and again, all the people around Eretz Yisrael who are schwitzing away. And one of the chizuks I'm getting is a lot of videos of them doing slichas and davening, and they had a Sefer Torah with a chosin, and they were throwing sweets to him, and this was in the middle of these big desert areas or bases in the middle of nowhere. And they're in that's what they're doing the last few weeks, or we're having holiday or whatever level it is. So we have to, once again, and that's just the training. Culture Kane knows who are mamish on the fronts. And, we have to keep having in mind the soldiers, and Bez Hashem, they'll have Shmer Leona. Because really, one of the main kavanas I wanted to do this event after the Hagim. I wanted to be right after the Hagim, when all the Cheslikim are still here. I want them to come, but I also want to do it close to October the 7th, Simchas Torah. Because 3 years since the war started, and, my son was a big part of it. My third son now is, preparing to be part of it. It's not ended, and it's the effects of it still here. And I just met a Miluimnik this week. We'll just end off with this story, and then we'll start learning Miluim. And he was Baruch Hashem, has been invited out to Young Israel in America in 5 towns. I know the people there. I've done events there with Rabbi Shalom Arush. And I started asking him, I said, like, have you ever spoken in front of this kind of people? And he's like, no. He said to me, you don't understand how, and he used the F word, how much it was in the war. Like, I said, bro, you speak in front of these young Israel Americans, you got to speak a certain way for these people, even if they want to hear an Israeli's viewpoint, but you have to like figure out the language. So I said to him, you know what, give me a number. And I sent him a whole bunch of videos from Elul Goldberg, because he was in the same unit. He was the rabbinic side. This guy was Miluim with all the hundreds of people that were killed. He was, the Chevra Kaddish, but more the Miluim army side of it, like collecting all the bodies and the blood. And so Eliyada of Goldberg was the other side, identifying all the bodies, but Al Pi Halacha, and they had all the halacha guidelines were given to the Miluim, and so I said he's got the sprach, he's got the language. And he's done so. He was on CNN and he spoke. There's loads of YouTube videos. He was on Meaningful People. He's got the language to speak to the Americans. Listen to him and from him, and he really appreciated it. So you never know what you can do for a stubborn Israeli standing on the street corner. You speak to him, and suddenly you realize you can help him, because what was the main reason Young Israel want to bring him there? Because they want to help Vita, the Miluim and the soldiers. They don't want to just forget about it. So they're flying him in just to machazik the olam, that they need to help these kind of people. And this is all part of Eretz Yisrael and the Kedusha of Eretz and the truth of Eretz. So we're learning Torah Mem Zayin, and we're in the second section, and we're talking about once again the Tefilin and Eretz Yisrael, Yaakov Avinu. So he goes on to say, Rabbi Nachman, Ein lezeh perish, ma chiba yesh le'inyan zeh, lama shekosu lamala. So on the face of it, it's incomprehensible. What does this have to do with what we said previously? The garments for his skin are the lever of Tefilin, and this is the aspect of the Tefilin that enter into him. What does this mean? So we did explain a little bit that the concept of, I don't know if you were here last week, I don't think you were, but the concept is the garment of the skin and the clothing. It's a deep concept, but basically the concept of poverty of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is in exile. Why? Because Am Yisrael aren't serving Hashem fully. So the other side, Malchus, who is the divine presence, is left impoverished. Because the whole reason why there's such a concept of schnorring and fundraising in a more nebuchi way, like embarrassing way, is we want to do this in a mechubed way, but unfortunately there's a lot of people that have to be embarrassed, and it's very difficult when you're needing funds. The soldiers need funds, families need funds, especially for the Chagim. People need help, need support. Now there's ways to do it in an honorable way, but unfortunately there's a lot of embarrassment, which is part of what this Torah is about. And he says that this concept of garments who are spiritually impoverished, the talis, represent and is the tzitzis and the tefillin. This is the covering which covers him. This is talis, and the garment is the skin, because tefillin are made of hides from animals. So when it said this lashon, that the or shel tefillin, and it is the skin of the tefillin, it's talking about this concept of the hides of animals that it's made with. These are the garments that he needs to cover his naked soul. Likewise, through the mitzvah, he fashions garments of divine presence. The whole point is you're garbing yourself, you're garbing the Shekhinah with mitzvahs, with tzitzis, with tefillin, and without these mitzvahs, you're in an impoverished state. We don't think about it though. You see a secular guy, or a Yid who's not yet from, a Jew who hasn't put tefillin on yet in his life. I'm friends with Gutman Locks. He puts tefillin on for the first time. Many people. I think he was the second or third person to ever put tefillin on me in my life, and I was only 18, 19. I first put it on my wife's twin brother was 18. Because I went to Reform Shul and they pointed over to the box when I was turning bar mitzvah. There's a box and all these tefillin were not wrapped up anything, just all in a pile on top of each other, not in a mechubed way. And they said, go put on those phylacteries or whatever. I don't know what that is. I didn't go anywhere near it, and I never put tefillin on. Until my brother-in-law started doing tshuva. He was my brother-in-law. He was one of my friends, one of my best friends. And it was a bit of a Reish Lakish story. It's like, I was a bit Reish Lakish, he was a bit Rabbi Yochanan. And I said, I looked at him, and he's a good-looking guy, and I jumped in the water like a gangster, and he said, no, I have a sister, if you come learn Torah. So his twin sister I married, yeah. But anyway, he put tefillin on me the first time, and but the point was, come back to this ma'aser that until then I was naked of tzitzis and tefillin, and that was the first mitzvahs I started doing. Was when I came to it, so I bought tzitzis, and I had, thank God, a miracle happened where Rav Moshe Mendelovich and Rav Schuster, Freiburg Schuster, they used to run the Heritage House a long time ago. They got hold of tefillin somehow, and it was only months later I saw a bill on the side that my dad had paid for those tefillin, but it looked as if they'd paid for it. And I was like, wow, such a nice thing you did. I ended up Baruch Hashem buying my own tefillin later on because I got more Mahuda ones. But for those few beginning years, I was using this chesed tefillin I got from the Old City, and got tzitzis from the Old City, and I started to clothe my neshama. And this is important. So, but he says here, but these words are incomprehensible. What does it have to do with what we said previously? That Rabbi Nachman never explained the difference between garment for his skin and tefillin. This is what we're trying to understand. So we explained a little bit, according to Kunizar, that it's the clothing of the neshama. But let's try and understand it. He's going to explain a bit more. Ach nira kavanasa kodesh ki lamala mevoah she'ayidei tefillin shebechinas emes. Yeah, this is like it's in a paragraph, like a bracketed paragraph, in the end of section 2 of 47. So he says, however, his holy intention seems to have been that, as explained by tefillin, is an aspect of truth. Remember, this is the whole thing. Bechinas emes, bechinas Yaakov. This is the Likutei that's more sensitive, because it's breaking the attribute of overly eating. And this is a very honest avoda. This is, remember, truth being emes, that Yaakov Avinu was Zish emes, Titan emes Yaakov. It doesn't just mean that he spoke truth when we think of this Talmud Chacham. It also meant how he ate, how he conducted himself with money, all the more subtle things that are between you and your Creator, between you and Hashem, here and there, but a lot of these things, like how you are in Kedusha, he has Matosi Shlema, he was Shalem in his bedroom. He was on a Madrega, Yaakov Avinu, Rashis Ono. So he was on a level where he didn't have any pagam. He was come out like Tikkun Chay Ad Marishon. That's what it says in Pre-Sodic. Yeah, he was called Kel, and the Gemara calls him in Sukkah, I think, like a bechina of God. Like obviously not God, but a bechina, a manifestation of the closest thing of how a godly person should be in the world. It's the Gemara. Mefereshes. You can go look up Mefarshim what that actually, when it calls him that, what that means. The Bedicheva says on Parsha Shoftim in this week's Parsha, he says about the Shtachim Ve'Lakel, he says, how is it you're not allowed to bow down to the sun, the moon, but you are allowed to have some sort of submissiveness to Talmud Chacham, to Tzaddik? What's the pshat? Obviously Levak's on into this Torah, but it's a very chassidish Torah. And having a Rebbe and having a certain, bittul to a Rebbe. So the way they explain it, the Bedicheva says, you're not bittul to the person. Chas v'shalom. That's the Vodazor. You're not allowed to. You're bittul to the godliness within him. That the fact he's so godly, that's what you're making yourself shaykh to his avodas Hashem, to his Torah. This is the point. So to come back here, Yaakov was on that bechina, it was emes. Because he broke Tavas Chila. Now this is the next step that Rabbi Nachman takes it to. All that avodah saves you from what? From poverty and what's the other word? Poverty. I don't know. Indignance. I don't know what that means. Yeah.
Indigence.
Indigence. What does that mean?
Indigence.
It's like a fine.
Extreme poverty.
Extreme poverty. Lo aleinu. Yeah, we should never know. Go Baruch Hashem, I don't know what it is because I don't want to know. Indigence. Thank you for helping me. Zema shahevi mikvazeh kihi smalosa. Yeah, I got a good English education. I didn't know that word. Probably it's in Oliver the Twist or something I read back in the day, but I probably didn't understand it then also. Yeah, this is the reason that he connected this verse, for is the garment with this matter. Yeah, for is his garment with this matter. This garment. So this garment of, we have to explain. Tefillin was spared this tremendous poverty because he was able to, Yaakov Avinu, Tefillin, emes, he was able to overcome.
Wait, is there a shir tonight?
No shir, no.
Sorry, no.
Motzi Shabbos, Bez Hashem. So, sorry. Yeah, it should have been announced. Doesn't matter. That's not my responsibility, but yeah, it should have been announced. Perish ki mikvazeh nema ani ve'evyon. This verse was said concerning the poor and the indignant. So he's going to explain a bit more. Ki hi kasutza levadahi tumlosa lo'ira. Meremiz al aniyas shchina galusa. Shemisham ika aniyas shal Yisrael b'goles meva b'tekunim. So he says this concept of is the garment of the skin. This alludes to poverty of the divine presence. I think we were sort of saying that before in explanation, which is from where the poverty of exiled Jewish people stems. And we mentioned the Tikkun Zohar, The Kabbalah teaches that man's sins cause the divine presence and Malchus to go into exile. This is a concept. It's one of the reasons, Bechina, the explanation of Sukkah in the Torah is you go into a Sukkah just to Makayim the Indian of Goddess. It's a big kapara to go out into exile. To be a little bit like the Shekhinah, like Tzaddikim used to do this normally, Melech, Reb Zusha. Sometimes you have to go into Bechina of Goddess and it's sort of shtickle exile. It can happen to you sometimes, like when you're trying to get somewhere, it doesn't work out, you feel like you're in a shtickle Goddess, you're stuck somewhere on a flight or this or that. Everyone's had their certain Bechina of Goddess, where you don't feel like you're at home and you're out of sorts. So that's the Shekhinah is like this, unfortunately, until Mashiach comes, even though we are returning, and hopefully that's a big nechama. The Shabbos is a nechamta right now. There's a big nechama that we're returning, and right now, Menashamayim, these weeks, a lot of Jews are coming back to it, so because they've been on Chofish, and now we're coming back home, Be'ez Hashem. So there is a certain nechama, I'm sure, for Roch and Boneh, like they're all Shuvu Bonim, they're all coming back to the Gevulam. But the point is that Malchus is the lowest level sphere, the one most closely associated with the world, and it cannot receive above the bounty intended for the Jewish people. The poverty of the divine presence Malchus is thus reflected in their spiritual poverty. The teaching Rabbi Nachman quotes in Tikkun Zohar, the garment for the skin, the hide of the Tefilin, indicates that the Tefilin are a garment for cloaking the divine presence. The Tefilin have the power to provide sustenance to Malchus. So this is something, this is a bit deep. We don't understand exactly these concepts, but the point is you can picture a person like I myself, when I first came to it, so I had long hair and earrings, so I probably looked a bit, different to the general religious people, but the point was, and I wasn't dressed appropriately, probably also has, sleeveless tops on and things like that. But I'm coming to Israel, and I'm naked of mitzvahs, literally. Yeah, and what does Hashem do? He sends you the shlichim, sends you the people to help you get tzitzit and tefillin, and slowly your neshama starts to be clothed. So this is why it compares the garment of the skin to tefillin, because it's a clothing of the neshama, it's a clothing of the Shekhinah, and it's connected to the inyan of Malchus. Zerki kesusa v'hi samosa lo'ira. This is a meaning for his covering as a garment for his skin. Da tefillin ha'ish tefillin ha'ikas smola Meneged Alanias Hashchina Knesset Yisrael. The Tefillin are the essential garment that protects the divine presence of the congregation of Israel against what? Poverty. Yeah, like the Chabadnik said to my father years ago. He said to my father once, he said, when you put Tefillin on, Tefillin Shorosh, for example, you have 3 letters Shin on one side, 4 letters on the other. That's Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, can I get Avram Yitzchak? That's Sarah Rivka Rocheleh. Put that on, go into a business deal afterwards, and now you've got the Avos and Emos helping you with your business. Like, you got to make it relate to, say, a business guy who doesn't really put tefillin on. Like, no, this mitzvah's with you now for the rest of the day. You're in a, like he says, it's protecting you from poverty, so you won't make the wrong deals because you're connected in. It's like the spiritual Wi-Fi when you put tefillin on the heart and the head. And the way it goes into the body with the straps and the ritzuas on the finger marrying Hashem, and the way it comes down for the beten and to the belly and to the bris, the straps, and it's b'kadish, it's connecting you and it's tapping you in. So he says tefillin mevatlin adalis, it gets rid of the poverty. Ki ikar shefa shiris nimshach aydei b'chinas Yaakov. And who would have thought? We would have thought more Yosef Asadi, because he was like Mishnah Lamelech. He was the one gathering all the wealth of Mitzrayim. Who would have thought Yaakov Avinu is? But that's why we need a tzaddik to explain it to us. The main abundance and wealth comes through Yaakov, through the aspect of Yaakov, Bechinas Emes, Bechinas Tefillin, Kach Nira Lila Ferish. So this is how I explain it. I think this was all Rabbi Nosson, explaining Rabbi Nachman, because it's very, very deep concepts that you would not think of naturally. So then he just goes off. We'll just do one little shtickle more. He says, Zer Perish Nasati Esev, and I will provide Esev in your sadeh for your animals. Da or da aleph. Ayin Beis Shin. That's what Esav is. Ayin Beis Shin. That's the letters. Ayin Beis and a Shin. Da Klalius Hagavin. Besodcha Vehemtecha. And we say in Krishma. Yeah. That this is encompassing of the colors in your sodeh for your fields. Yeah. This is Mavish Kabbalah Beishnish. Krishma is sadeh. That's a behemius. When you break the animal side, your animalistic qualities, that's the sadeh. Sadeh is the field. As this gale kaliyas agavin. Then we reveal all the different kinds of colors. Hashem bestows countenance upon you. And we all need color in our life. Black and white, that's not real Yiddishkeit. I don't know why it became a bit more. My son was actually asking me this Shabbos, why do they, it seems like the really from world, the very strict Orthodox, or whatever you want to call them, they made Yiddishkeit seem very black and white. Even the clothing, everything's very black and white. Yiddishkeit is black and white, there's rules. So I said that's not real Yiddishkeit. Real Yiddishkeit is with color. It's alive, it's Chaim, it's Torah's Chaim. So he's saying here that in order to reveal the full color in your life, and the full countenance of Hashem, which is connected to this concept of color, and the shin, he's going to explain, the shin represents apparently all the different colors somehow. Yeah, we have to explain that, because let's see. He says iron base is a Shem Kodesh. Yeah, it's the way the Shem Havaya opens up the Shem 72. Yeah, that's Asev, and the shin in the middle represents Yaakov, because it contains three branches, which is Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes. And Yaakov is like the Bachor, the Avos. And we said Avram Yitzchak Yaakov on the Tefilin. So there's a shin there. Maybe that's one of the reasons why he's bringing this concept. And breaking the animal qualities. This is the concept of the field, because it's also the same lashon as the same root as shidud, which is plowing. This represents breaking the animal aspects of ourselves, so we can become, as we said, the Taivas Achila is removed. We become less behemoths, more neshama. Yeah, and that is a key to Ashiris. In review, so let's do a summary, and with it. Being steeped in desire for eating is indicative of judgments and poverty. It will lead to shame. Because in a way, I suppose that you're not being honest, you're not being true, you're not being emes. So then you're not shaykh the divine flow that's coming into the world, because you've ruined the flow, you've overly engaged in Olam Hazeh. You're not aligned anymore in the Metzias of how Hashem put Sino. Like for example, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, the whole world was sustained through him, and he would just have chorev, like those you've seen them on Eretz Yisrael. What are they called? When you ever go hiking in Moran or whatever, the chorev tree. What's it called? Carob. Shim Bar Chai was sustained from them, and the concept of tzaddikim, they take very little, and yet there's so much shefa coming through them, so much abundance, because they're emes. They only eat what they need to eat. And conversely, breaking desire is synonymous with truth. Tiferes, Tefilin, and divine countenance, which is what we were just learning. When one merits truth, favor the aspect of Yaakov Tefilin, one merits the Holy Land, whose sustenance provided by the aspect of Tefilin, which is also life, Chaim. So anyway, Pashas Kisei say we're in a Mochama situation for our neshama. It's a Mochama when you eat, there's Kedusha Sechila, there's a Mochama when you look at things. Everything has a certain Bechina Mochama. There's a Mochama for the Am, in our safety and our security. Everything has a certain Bechina, but the good news is that Baruch Hashem, Hashem will He gives us all the guidance and the Torah and the emes to help us deal with this. We have to align ourselves with the truth of Torah, and with the Sat Shema, by being more aligned, we'll have much more Ashiris, we'll have much more abundance, we'll be part of the divine flow in creation like the Tzaddikim are, and Bez Hashem, we'll be Zocher to Kasiva Chasima Tova, and we'll have a colorful year, Bez Hashem. That's it.